Mr. Harrigan's Phone, a horror movie without any horror.
How dreadful.
Mr. Harrigan's Phone is a film adaptation of Stephen King's novella, which was published in 2020. The story follows a teenage loner named Craig who befriends a terminally ill elderly man named Mr. Harrigan. Over the course of their relationship, Mr. Harrigan pays Craig to read books to him, and Craig introduces Mr. Harrigan to technology. Eventually, Mr. Harrigan dies, and Craig plants a cell phone, the cell phone that he purchased for Mr. Harrigan. He plants that in his coffin for a memento. Craig eventually doubts that Mr. Harrigan is even dead when he begins getting texts from his grave. These texts lead to strange events surrounding the mysterious deaths of some of Craig's toughest adversaries, which he credits to the vengeful spirit of Mr. Harrigan. That was the promise of the premise, but boy, does this movie go downhill from there. First, the narration. Jaden Martell's tone wasn't suspenseful enough to narrate it. And then his narration oftentimes seemed to be retrospective, like he was telling a story of the past, and other times the narration felt like it was confused about what time period it was in. It was just very awkward. I think the narration hurt it. Then there were the subplots. There seemed to be so many subplots without any resolution. They seemed to just amble aimlessly. The communications from the grave, that subplot or that main plot point, I think there was something there, but what would follow just fizzled, it seemed. Like it just didn't go anywhere. It kept hitting dead ends. And then watching this story unfold felt like watching someone's photo album and you have no idea who these people are because you don't really have a connection to them. It just felt like random people were doing things because there wasn't a connection to the audience. And then one minute you think this is going to be an allegory about the early stages of technology and the psychological attachments we have to, technology and the internet. I thought it was going somewhere meaningful, and it just falls so flat. And half of the movie is so inconsequential. It's surprising it even made the final cut. That's the trouble with the subplots. And then Craig has such a deep connection to Mr. Harrigan, alive and when he dies, but virtually no connection to his mother, who died too. Like, he is so attached to Mr. Harrigan, and you rarely hear him even mention his dead mother. The main characters just deliver this just monotone and unemotional performance that I've just felt detached. I would have enjoyed this film if it focused on the supernatural thriller elements, like these communications from the grave, his getting help from Mr. Harrigan to tackle these the antagonists or the bullies in his life. This film reminded me a lot of Don't Let Go, starring David Oyelowo and Storm Reed from a few years back, which also was executed poorly, so to speak. It did remind me a lot of that. I wish it would have focused more on the obsessive compulsive nature we have with technology. And I wish it would have expounded on Craig grieving his mother and Mr. Harrigan as filling a hole in his heart because he misses his mother so much. And if this was going to be a coming of age horror story, it should have focused more on his development. And by that I mean, does he really grow? I don't really see any substantial growth in his character. No exponential growth is there. Now, all characters, I understand, don't grow. But for a coming of age story, he was supposed to grow, and I don't see the growth. The movie I would have preferred, a young boy uses beyond the grave communications from his dead mentor to exact revenge against the bullies in his life. That I would have wanted to see, this supernatural horror film. And it could have been rated PG-13 still. But this, it fell flat for me.